Good evening. Welcome to the May 4th Zoning Board special meeting of the City of New Brunswick. The meeting was delayed for 20 minutes, and we are beginning now at 7:20. I'm going to begin with a public service announcement. And before that, just to make sure, please mute your lines when you're it's not your turn to speak. It's highly appreciated. Thank you. This is a public service announcement. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy has issued executive orders limiting the size of public gatherings of individuals until further notice. Furthermore, the CDC has issued guidelines to limit gatherings of groups. The City Zoning Board of Adjustment intends to meet on a regular schedule and will meet the guidelines of the Open Public Meetings Act by utilizing teleconferencing systems. Public participation at public meetings has been revised, and the public may participate through a conference call-in system. The public is encouraged to call into the conference call system through their phone numbers and access codes transmitted in the special meeting notice to the Home News Tribune and Star Ledger and posted in the back vestibule of City Hall, visible to the public through the windows. Board professionals will also be available via conference call during this meeting as well. All parties on the conference call will have the opportunity to hear the Zoning Board of Adjustment. During the portions of the meeting that are not open for public comment, all callers from the public will be muted, and the board will not be able to hear any public comment through the conference call system. During the public comment periods, those on the conference call in line who have interest in addressing the board, addressing the board, will first be organized by last name and then called upon to speak. After all organized members of the public speak, the process will happen again until all public has had an opportunity to speak once and for no more than 5 minutes on any given public meeting portion. A timer will chime at the completion of each 5-minute period, and I will notify you that your time has expired. Public meeting assistants accessing the calling number should call City Hall at 732-745-5007.
I have seen the iconic photos of the assets playing all of them. Now, I can't say for certain the first sport they play, but I feel like that's what this part.
Excuse me, sir. Can you mute your phone while it's not your turn to, no, thank you.
The meeting will order. Roll call.
Christian Sumano? John Zimmerman?
Here.
Carla Castaneda? Oh, wait, sorry.
Here.
Oh, yeah, I'm walking back. I jumped the gun. Evelyn Estona? Carla McNair? Beverly Sanchez?
I'm not sure.
Zimmerman's here. Carla Castaneda?
Here.
Michael Belvin?
Here.
Ivan Adorno?
Is the correct answer, giraffes have fewer than humans?
Coppola? John Cox?
Here.
$10,000.
Chairman Cox, this is Marvin. I told you, I understand that Mr. Zimmerman is present, but if we could have him effectively say so by voice.
Okay. John Zimmerman? Excuse me, someone from the public has a conversation going on or some sort of line. We'll need you to mute that, please. Thank you.
They said okay. Did Beverly say that she was here?
No.
I thought she was. Okay. Public announcement.
Please be advised that the notice requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act have been complied with and satisfied, and that the annual notice, which is sufficient notice of the time, place, and conduct of all public meetings of the Zoning Board of Adjustment, City of New Brunswick, has been filed with the city clerk and placed on an appropriate bulletin board and placed on the back vestibule of City Hall to the public through the windows of the lobby of City Hall, New Brunswick, New Jersey, and has been transmitted to the official newspaper of New Brunswick, namely the Home News Tribune. Additionally, as this is a special meeting with a special location, time and place and manner of conducting this meeting, there was also a posting on the back vestibules and also transmitted to the official newspapers of the City of New Brunswick, namely the Home News Tribune and Star Ledger. Governor Phil Murphy has issued executive orders limiting the size of public gatherings of individuals until further notice. Furthermore, the CDC has issued guidelines to limit gatherings of groups. The city zoning board intends to meet on a regular schedule and will meet the guidelines of the Open Public Meetings Act by using teleconferencing systems. Public participation at public meetings has been revised, and the public may participate through a conference call-in system. The public is encouraged to call into the conference call system through the phone numbers and access codes transmitted in the in the special meeting notice to the Home News Tribune and Star Ledger and posted in the back vestibule of City Hall, visible to the public through the windows. Board professionals will also be available via conference call during this meeting as well. All parties on the conference call will have the opportunity to hear the zoning board meeting. During the portions of the meeting that are not open to the public comment, all callers from the public will be muted, and the board will not be able to hear any public comment through the conference call system. During the public comment period, those on the conference call in lines who have interest in addressing the board will first be organized by last name and then called upon to speak. After all organized members of the public speak, the process will happen again until all the public has had an opportunity to speak once and for no more than 5 minutes in any given public meeting portion. A timer will chime at the completion of each 5-minute period. I will notify you that your time has expired. Public needing assistance accessing the call-in number should call City Hall at 732-745-5007.
Okay, we got the phone.
Okay.
One, we're with them.
Just hold on.
All right, salute to the flag. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Resolutions of memorialization.
Hold on. I apologize, Mr. Chair.
No problem.
Mr. Ital. Mr. Ital. Yeah. Our recorder was not recording during the public announcement and the roll. Would you like me to repeat those?
No, that's not going to be necessary. If the meeting minutes can reflect that the recorder was not recording that portion but was turned on.
Okay, it is recording now. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Resolutions of memorialization. Do we have it?
Yes, we do. Wait, no, we don't. We do not. No, we don't. We had a meeting last week.
Correct.
So, yeah.
All right, public hearing. 78 Eastern Avenue, Urban Renewal LLC, 88 Eastern Avenue, Block 56, Lot 1.04, ZB-2020-03. Mr. Kelso?
Yes, members of the board, Thomas Kelso on behalf of the applicant, 78 Eastern Avenue Urban Renewal LLC. We appreciate your consideration of this application this evening. The board is familiar, I'm sure, with this project, which is currently under construction at the intersection of Hamilton Street and East Avenue. What we're here before you this evening is to seek your approval of 2 variances associated with exterior signage, which is proposed to be constructed on the building itself. Those 2 sign variances are associated with, number 1, the sign area of each sign, which is being proposed at 35.34 square feet, whereas the maximum sign area of 6 square feet is permitted. The second application for a variance associated with the sign is a projecting sign thickness of 14.25 inches, whereas a maximum of 8 inches is permitted. As I've indicated previously, we propose one of these signs, which are identical, on each of the sides, one on the Eastern Avenue facade and the second on the Hamilton Street facade. My intent is to call 2 witnesses for you this evening. First, Mr. Christian Roach, our civil engineer, and then our planner, Sean Murphy, to support variances. Unless the board has any questions, at this point, I would call Mr. Christian Roach for testimony.
Go ahead, please call your first witness.
Christian Roach.
Please say your name, spell your last name.
Sure, it's Christian Roach, R-O-C-H-D.
Mr. Roach, do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You may proceed.
Mr. Chairman, this is Arvin Isall, Board Attorney. Mr. Roach has been before this board on a number of occasions. If I may, Mr. Roach, have your credentials changed since the last time you were before this board and accepted as an expert witness?
They have not.
We'll accept you as an expert witness.
Chris, what I'm going to do is, rather than ask you specific questions, as awkward as it is, I'm then just going to ask you if you could give us the basis for the signage, go into some detail with regard to the location and the signage itself. And again, you feel free to use the exhibits that I know have been posted on the web for purposes of public review, and I know the board has them. I don't know if they've been marked, but...
Yes, Mr. Calso, the exhibit is marked in the exhibit and supporting documents folder for 88 Easton, formerly known as 78 Easton ZB 2020-03, and it is marked as Exhibit 1A, CS 101 Sign Location Plan 42920 for ZB 2020-03. So it is A1 if you would like to refer to it.
All right, Chris, if you could then refer to the exhibits and give us the basis for the application.
Sure. So in order to try to simplify things in this virtual meeting setting, both myself and Mr. Moronsky, our planner, are only going to refer to that single exhibit marked as A1 throughout our testimony here tonight. To get everyone familiar with the project site is bound by Easton Avenue to the north, which is the top of the page on the exhibit, Hamilton Street on the east side, Gilden Street to the south, and residential uses to the west. We're here tonight to propose two building identification signs. As Mr. Kelso mentioned, these signs are identical to one another. One sign will be placed along Easton Avenue. The other sign will be placed along Hamilton Street. Both signs will display the building name, which is Verge Student Living, and they will be mounted to the building as projecting signs, which are permissible in the C3B district. The signs are around 35 square feet each, 35.34 square feet exact. They're 3 feet wide, approximately 11 feet 9 inches tall, and 14 inches thick. Signs are also eternally illuminated. Relative to where the signs are going on the building, along Easton Avenue, the sign will be placed approximately 240 feet west of the Easton Avenue and Hamilton Street intersection. The sign on Hamilton will be placed approximately 120 feet south of that same intersection of Easton Avenue and Hamilton Street. Both signs will be mounted approximately 17 feet above surrounding grade, which far exceeds the minimum mounting height of 8 feet. Relative to the variances that we're seeking tonight, we're seeking a total of 3 variances, of which Mr. Kelso mentioned 2 relative to the sign size. Specifically, our signs are 35 square feet, where 6 feet is the maximum permitted. Our sign thickness is 14.25 inches, whereas 8 inches is permitted. And then the last variance is for the internal illumination of the sign. Our planner, Sean Moronsky, unless there are any questions for me, can now go through the variance proofs.
All right, Sean, you're going to need to be sworn in.
Okay.
Hey, Tom, let me just see if any member of the board has any questions for Mr. Roach. Any members of the board have any questions or comments for Mr. Roach?
No.
Seeing none, Tom, call your next witness, please.
Yes, at this time, I would call Mr. Sean Moronsky for testimony.
Please state your name, spell your last name.
Sean Moronsky, M-O-R-O-N-S-K-I.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You may proceed.
Thank you.
Mr. Moronsky, if you could, I'm going, rather than ask you specific questions, I would just ask you to run through the basis for the variances that have been identified and that we're requesting?
Okay, and they're all they're all in a sense tied together. The sign area, your ordinance permits 6 square feet maximum. As Chris mentioned, we're proposing 35.34 square feet. The sign area permits the signs and the specific entrances to be seen from the intersection and other locations, and this is especially important given the distance 120 feet to the south from the intersection and 240 feet west as well. And as you go to the east toward Easton Avenue, where you have other types of signs that are projecting signs, these signs are not out of scale. The proposed signs are proportional to signage that you would see in the area. Sign thickness, that allows for internal illumination, which is also one of the variances we have. And the internal illumination would allow for efficient identification throughout day and night, particularly when viewing from distances, particularly from the intersection of Easton and Hamilton. We promote purposes of zoning, encouraging municipal action to guide appropriate use of development in a manner which promotes the general welfare. The variances requested will allow for a placement of a sign that effectively identifies the building from multiple locations. We promote a desirable visual environment. The signs are certain relative to the street and the size of the building, provide adequate sight distance, but are not disproportional to the signage in the area. In terms of the negative criteria, there's no substantial detriment to the public good. The sign lighting results in a de minimis light increase. It would not adversely affect neighboring development, and the proposed signage is certainly not out of proportion given the length of the building and the height of the building. There's no substantial detriment to the intent and purpose of the zone plan. We meet the other requirements for projecting signs, including a number of signs per footage, clearance, setback, and in terms of consistency with your master plan documents, the 2004 master plan reexamination talks about mixed-use buildings recommended for the site. The proposed signage contributes to the overall redevelopment of this particular site. And for the reasons provided, I believe you can grant the requested variances all under the C2 criteria. Thank you.
I have no further questions from Mr. Moronsky, if the board wishes to direct to him.
Does any member of the board have any comments for Mr. Moronsky? Seeing none. Tom, do you have anything else?
The only thing that I would indicate is both the DNR engineering review letter dated May the 1st and the Bignell planning review letter of April the 30th. We've reviewed both of them. There is nothing in those reports actually that need to be addressed. We would indicate that in Mr. Bignell's report with regard to previous conditions still being applicable, and we understand agree to that. And there were no other questions or comments, so we will comply with both of those reports. And that completes our presentation.
All right, thank you, Tom. At this time, I'd like to open the meeting up to the public for comments. I'm going to read a statement first. At this time, we are preparing to open the meeting to the public comment on this specific hearing, specific items for 5 minutes per person. In order to ensure that the zoning board can hear from the interested public and that the public can hear public comment, I will organize the speakers in order by last name. In a moment, I will unmute the public call-in. At that time, I will ask for those with the last name starting with A to provide me with your last name, first name, and home address. I will confirm that the information is correct and then move on to the next person alphabetically from A to Z. Upon the completion of asking for all last names from A to Z, I will ask one more time for anyone who may want to be placed on the initial list of speakers. We will then move through the list of speakers by calling the person by name and permitting them 5 minutes to speak. Once we complete the list, we will once again check to see if anyone else would like to comment. After asking 3 times, I will then close the public portion. Please be mindful that your voice is being telephonically transmitted and to speak slowly and clearly for the benefit of all. I will ask that you please remain silent when I initially unmute the phone so that we can all hear each other and then begin the speaking registration process. Unmute the phone. The phone is now unmuted. I will ask that the member of the public on the phone who would like to comment on a specific ordinance with the last name starting with the letter A, please state your full name and home address.
On the specific hearing.
What's that?
On the specific hearing.
On this specific hearing. Letter A, anyone? Letter B? Letter C? Letter D? E? F? G? H? I? J? K?
Charlie Cradaville.
Thank you, Charlie. L? M? N? O? E? Q? R? S? T? U? V? W? X? Y? Z? Any other member who may have just got on or missed the calling would like to speak? Seeing none?
Evelyn has spoken.
Who's that?
Evelyn.
Evelyn.
Oh, okay, thank you. Board member Evelyn Ascona has gotten on to the meeting. Any member of the public?
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead, Arvin.
This is Arvin Eitel, the board attorney. If the board minutes can reflect that Ms. Ascona has been on for the application, if she becomes eligible to vote.
Okay. Board secretary made that aware. All right, so any other member of the public? Last call to comment on this particular application. One more time, any other person? Seeing none, we'll go right to Charlie Cradaville. Please state your name, spell your last name.
Sure, Mr. Chairman. Charlie Cradaville, Kratovil.
Mr. Cradaville, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth and the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, and I'm raising my right hand.
Thank you.
I believe you.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to start with a point of process. I heard there's a time limit of 5 minutes. That's kind of a new thing. I wanted to bring this up at the last meeting. Is there any reason for that? I know sometimes these applications you need more than 5 minutes to get all the questions and answers on the record.
Mr. Chairman, this is Arvin Eitel, board attorney. I would advise the board that the questions and the comments have to be directed towards the application. That's a general question that Mr. Cradaville could certainly bring up at the end of the meeting.
Thank you, Arvin.
Well, it's a question about this very hearing and the rules regarding it. So, for instance, if I ask a question and there's time that someone is answering the question, does that count against my 5 minutes?
I'm pausing the counter when that's happening, Mr. Cradaville.
Okay, thank you. And in light of the fact I am the only member of the public that's asked to speak on this application, I hope, Mr. Chairman, you'll give me a little leeway if it takes more than 5 minutes to get these questions and answers on the record, but I'll be as quick as possible. I wanted to, first of all, ask, this is the project where there was a immense construction disaster on July 21st, and the construction crane was taken down and damaged 2 buildings, and thank God no one was killed. This is the same project, correct?
I object to the question. It's not relevant to the application.
It's not relevant if your client hired contractors to work on this site that caused a calamity like that?
This is an application for 2 signs.
Right. On a tall building that is the subject of the worst construction disaster I've ever seen in my life. So I'm just asking the board to consider that fact before they give you another bite at the apple to get this variance for this unnecessary sign. And as someone who has lived on the block right across the street, the next house over from the one that got destroyed by this crane, I would like some answers, and I think the board should also want to hear some answers about this incident before considering any variance to further allow them to violate the zoning of the city. So can anyone at the company, is there a representative of the company on the call, or maybe Mr. Kelso has learned a little bit about it, since I know he's a property owner and a business owner in the area? What was the cause of the crane collapse on July 21st?
Let me answer your question again. The answer to your question is specifically that it's not relevant to this application. However, I will indicate to you that notwithstanding that, my client and I would not answer any questions with regard to this because it's pending. Everybody knows the crane fell, and there's likely pending litigation, and we wouldn't discuss pending litigation anyway.
Okay, well then maybe you shouldn't be coming before the zoning board asking for unnecessary variances. The answer to the question was, I'm not going to answer the question. And to me, that's insufficient. If you're asking the city for special permission to do above and beyond what's allowed by the zoning ordinance, you should atone for what happened. And I'll be frank with you, I reported on this. As you know, I'm a journalist with New Brunswick Today, and I asked all the parties involved about what happened. And Collegiate Development Group was the one party that stood out as the ones that did not respond at all to any inquiries. They did not explain themselves, they did not say what happened, and they did not take responsibility for this disaster. And I'll be honest, I don't want this sign to come flying off the building and kill somebody because of their work. I don't have reason to believe that's going to happen, other than the fact that the people they got involved, the Vergona Construction Crane Company, left the crane upright on a day when there was extreme wind and no one was at the site to supervise, and the crane collapsed, and it could have killed many people. Thank God it didn't. But I'm just asking for some basic answers, since I never got them last summer from your client. So is there a representative of Collegiate Development Group that can tell us what happened that night and why we shouldn't be concerned about this sign falling off of the building in a windstorm and killing somebody?
Again,
Mr. Chairman, this is Untitled for the board attorney. There were 2 witnesses that were sworn in, and if Mr. Cradable's question goes to one of those 2 witnesses, and I think Mr. Kelso has indicated that there are no witnesses that can answer that question, and he's objecting to the question. So perhaps the board can ask that Mr. Cradable move on.
Certainly.
Okay, so we heard there's no answer to the question of how can we be sure this sign's not going to fall off of the building in a windstorm and kill someone. I think that's a fair question that the folks who put together this proposal should be able to answer before you give them a variance. I think it's reasonable in light of what happened. They should explain themselves, and I don't feel that that's at all inappropriate to ask about in this situation. And I think if they were community members here instead of an out-of-state corporation, they might actually feel more of a need to explain themselves.
Charlie, this is John Cox, Chairman. Do you have a question specifically to the application as for the signs? If not, we have to move on.
Sure. So I'm looking at the application here, and I see a document prepared by Benson. Is that I don't know what you call this, but it's Benson Signs from Alpharetta, Georgia, and it has an address here for the project, 129 Easton Avenue. Is that the correct address for the project? Pretty sure the zoning board is considering an application for the Shell station at 131 Easton Avenue, and gosh, I don't think this is the same site, right?
The site is formerly 78, 92, and 94 Easton Avenue. So whatever that address is, that's on that plan.
So I just want to be clear, the applicant submitted a document as part of their application that has incorrect information about the location of the variance they're requesting.
Mr. Chairman, if there are any other questions?
Charlie,
I didn't hear an answer to that one.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, that sounded more like a comment than it was a question. I think that the prior answer sort of gave an explanation.
If I might interject, the address, first of all, is relevant, but I think that address is the address where the construction office is located in the project.
Thank you, Mr. Kelso.
Really? At the Shell station?
No, not the Shell station, Charlie.
Well, you're familiar with the
You
area,
got the
no?
number wrong, but
Easton Avenue. The even numbers on Easton Avenue are on what side of the street? Are they on the side with the building and with the rental office, or are they on the side with the Shell station?
Construction site. It is not the address of the construction site.
Right. It's an incorrect address. It says the project location is 129 Easton, and that is not true. That's on a different block on a different side of the same street. And I'm just pointing out that this is a mistake. There's a mistake in your application. And we all make mistakes, Mr. Kelso. It's okay. You don't have to lose your cool with me. We all make mistakes. And what's important when we make a mistake is that we own it and that we make it right by explaining how it happened so we can make sure it doesn't happen again. This is a minor mistake. However, what happened on July 21st was a major mistake. And this company, this applicant that is asking the city to do it a favor, it's asking all of you on the board to do them a favor by giving them relief from the normal zoning laws that apply to all New Brunswick property owners. And I suggest that for a out-of-state corporation that has not been willing to make it right and to acknowledge the mistake that caused this devastation last summer, they are not a worthy candidate for this application, for this approval of a variance. And I'll just, I'll first of all, I'll allow you to respond to that if you do want to, apologize or explain these mistakes.
At this time, the 5 minutes is up, Charlie.
All right. Well, then I'll just close by saying this is completely unnecessary. The building is going to have just as many tenants, whether it has a bright sign outside of it or not. And if they could, if there's any way, make sure that the sign is pointed right at Mr. Kelso's office. That would be ideal. But I don't think this is going to be good for the neighborhood to have a sign that's illuminated all the time. And I just don't see why this corporation is worthy of relief for this particular request, especially in light of their track record so far. This is their first building in New Brunswick, and they have a colossal screw-up on their record already. So coming back to the board, just because Kelso's their attorney doesn't mean you should approve this. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Charlie. Is there anyone from the public who did not place their name on the list before that is now that would like to speak? Anyone else?
Can I ask a quick question?
Okay.
be a few minutes. My name is I didn't say my name during but it's just a question that I thought of, if I can, at this point. If
What's
not,
your
it's
name?
fine.
Your name?
Hello? It's, last name is Mora, M-O-R-A, and my first name is Julio, J-U-L-I-O. So I just had a...
Mr. Mora, hold on, we're going to give everyone a chance so we can note if anyone else wants to comment, and then we'll come back to you.
Okay.
Just hold.
Last time for, calling for the public comment. Anyone have it? Anyone have, want to put their name on the list? Seeing none, Ms. Moore?
Mr. Mora.
Mr. Moore.
You already stated your name and spelled it out. Mr. Mora, do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right. You've got 5 minutes.
Just had a quick question. Mr. Olmsky, he's a planner, right?
Yeah, Sean.
Moran,
Yes, sir.
Sean Moran, yeah.
Go ahead.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I'm here, Mr. Mora.
I understand in your explanation for the granting of the sign variance, you noted that, that there were, it wasn't uncharacteristic of the commercial corridor because, there's, there's others on Easton Avenue that are, similar in nature, and that there's, a projecting sign, which I did notice that there was 2 of them, although I did notice that, that the 2 existing ones on Easton Ave, they're both, not as high, whereas you're proposing it, at the 17-foot level. The other 2 are more at the, more at the 10-foot, more oriented toward, closer to the ground. So I just, so my question is really just, if you foresee that, that affecting the uniform characteristic of, one being higher than the other, how is that still, characteristic of the neighborhood? How is that sign still characteristic of the neighborhood if it's, 17 feet?
Well, I'm sorry, I think I get your question. What I was referring to is that the area has a range of signs, projecting signs, and yes, what the proposed sign is higher. And Mr. Roche had mentioned, because there's a minimum sign clearance, that for this particular building, the sign clearance is also helpful because as it's higher and you have a longer building frontage with this building as opposed to other buildings on Easton, significantly higher. So having it at a higher height, it helps in terms of viewing the sign from the intersection in particular, identifying where the entrance on the longer frontage is as well. So in terms of the type, size of signage, it is characteristic. And in terms of the height, it serves multiple positive purposes, among them clearance and more efficient site identification.
Okay. That kind of leads me to my other, just one more quick question. So I understand how that makes sense for the site on Easton Avenue, but in particular, how does this fare with the Hamilton Street side where Hamilton Street going south is largely kind of these neighborhood commercial businesses that most of them just have smaller signs. No one really has, projecting signs at all, but it's also intermingled with, single and two family, is there any, does that, I guess my question is, does that explanation change, with like the Hamilton Street location?
I generally speaking, it doesn't from the standpoint of from either direction. You're identifying the general area where the entrance to the building is, and coming from the north as well, and you want to have a uniform design with signs as they're both the same size and they're both at the specific entry locations as well. What's notable, because the concern obviously about the type of development on Hamilton, while the sign is internally illuminated, it's a de minimis light increase. It's 1/4 of a foot candle, and that would have de minimis effect surrounding area. So from a design standpoint, I believe that the variance explanation is the same.
Okay. That was all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Is there anyone else on the
Mr. Chair,
phone?
I have a single yes or no question. It's Charlie Cradaville. May I ask it?
Yes.
Thank you. Is construction currently going on at the site, or has it been ceased under the Governor's Executive Order 122?
It's ongoing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Seeing none, we'll close. One more time for the, anyone else from the public that hasn't spoken yet, like to speak on this, application? Last call for public comment on this application. Seeing none, the public portion of this application is closed. Mr. Kelso, do you have anything else that you'd like to, speak on?
No, I submit to the board.
Thank you. Board members have any comments or discussions?
No.
No.
Seeing none, can we have, conditions for approval if we, move forward with this?
Yes, this is, hello?
Yes.
Yep, this is Katie, Principal Planner of the City of New Brunswick. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Katie.
So the board acts favorably on this application. We recommend the following conditions of approval apply. Compliance with the terms of the DNR engineering report dated May 1st, 2020. Payment of a site performance bond in the amount reviewed and approved by the city engineer. Submission of a site inspection escrow deposit for engineering inspection fees in an amount calculated pursuant to Title 1624-160. The applicant shall schedule a pre-construction meeting with the Department of Engineering. Compliance with the terms of the Signal Planning Consultant Report dated April 30th, 2020. Planning review escrow funded for all anticipated post-approval reviews. Payment of all outstanding taxes, water, sewer, or any other fees due to the City of New Brunswick. Submit engineering or architectural plans to comply with changes required by the planning or engineering memos or plan amendments offered at the hearing, if any. All utilities and other site improvements to be maintained by the applicant at their full expense. All temporary encroachments into the public right-of-way shall require City Council approval. And the applicant has requested the following variances, a bulk variance for signage area and picnic. That's all.
Thank you, Katie. Do I have a motion by board members? Just say your name before you, say it and go forward.
Christian Simano, motion.
Do I hear a second?
John Zimmerman, I'll second it.
Thank you, John.
Okay. Christian Simano,
Yes.
Evelyn Escona,
Yes.
John Zimmerman,
Yes.
Carla Castaneda,
Yes.
Michael Belvin,
Yes.
John Cox.
Yes. Congratulations, Bill.
Thanks a lot. the board.
We'll move on to, second application.
75 Plum.
75 Plum Street, LLC, 75 Plum Street, lot 417, lot 28, ZB-2019-15. Variance application for the for the conversion of an existing one-family home into a two-family home to contain 2 3-bedroom units. Second floor additions are proposed over the existing first floor to the front and rear of the building. Zoning district R-5A. Tom Kelso, you're up.
Members of the board, I'm here to represent 75 Plum LLC, who is the applicant for this application. As has been indicated in the introduction, this is an application to convert a single-family residence into a two-family residence at 75 Plum Street. The application has been vetted through the Technical Advisory Committee. Changes have been made essentially to the plans to conform with recommendations by the City Planning Department. We're hoping that you will see fit to grant the variances that are necessary for this application. I would indicate to you that since it's a two-family residence, this does not require site plan approval. It is strictly for purposes of the variances. My intent is to call 2 witnesses. Would be Mr. Roberto Hernandez, who is our architect, who can go through the plans and identify the variances that are more specific to both variances. And then I also have Ms. Kate Keller, our professional planner, who will provide planning support for the variances. If I might then, let me just go through these variances. There's a series of variances, for the most part, that are all existing conditions. They are, under the city's requirements, you are essentially required to reapprove them when we do a change of use such as this. But a number of these variances already exist. The first is a lot width of 37.3 feet, whereas a minimum of an 80-foot lot's required. Now, this is an existing condition. Second, a lot area of 3,935.15 square feet, whereas a minimum of 8,000 is required. Once again, that's the existing condition, but it's an existing lot. The third is the combined side yard setback of 4.87 feet, whereas a minimum of 25. Again, this is the existing condition associated with the building that's already there.
Mr. Kelso, if you could repeat that one, the telephone cut out a bit. If you could repeat that one last,
Yeah, a combined side yard setback of 4.87 feet, whereas a minimum of 25 is required. Now, once again, this is an existing condition because it defines the footprint of the building as it exists. Next, is a side yard setback of 1.12 feet on the north side and 3.75 feet on the south side, whereas a minimum of 15 feet is required. Again, this is the existing condition defining the footprint of the existing building. Next is a building coverage of 29.5%, whereas a maximum of 20% is permitted. Just so you know, the existing condition is 27.09%. So in effect, although it's an increase, we're requesting an increase of only about 1.5%. It's just a slight change based upon one improvement that's being made. There is an existing floor area ratio nonconformity, which we are asking to increase slightly. The floor area ratio of 0.52 to 1 is being requested, whereas a maximum of 0.35 to 1 is permitted. What's already existing is 0.43 to 1. So we're actually requesting an increase of the existing FAR of 0.09 to 1. So it's less than the 1% increase in the floor area ratio. There are 2 new variances that are being requested based upon the change of use. The first is we're requesting a front yard setback of 5.51 feet whereas 10 feet is required. The reason for this is that there is a porch that is being added, an open front porch that's being added to conform to the access of the building, but it's really in line with the balance of the setbacks of the properties along the street. And lastly, a parking variance, one space, where there's one space that is existing that we have there, whereas 4 is required. So it's only a parking variance for 3 feet. We submit that it's appropriate considering the location of Plum Street and its proximity to Easton Avenue and the university campus. Those are the variances that are being requested. Again, there's a whole series of them, most of which are existing and being increased only de minimisly, a slightly difference in them, other than the last 2. So with that as an overview, I will be providing 2 witnesses for you. The first is Roberto Hernandez, and I would call Roberto for testimony.
Hey, Tom, just 1 second, just get some, I just want to ask all board members, does any board member have a conflict with this, application? All right, seeing none. Tom, please call your first witness.
Yeah, and I would indicate, I recognize that there are 6 members of the board here. You know, in consideration of the circumstances that we're in here, I'm going to take a flyer and indicate that, I'm sorry, I'm getting feedback. Is that?
I'm not hearing.
We're not getting much feedback on this side, Tom.
I think the feedback is myself.
Yeah.
Although we have 6 members, all those variances that I've indicated are non-D variances. There's just one D variance, which is that 0.09 increase in the FAR. Considering the de minimis nature of that, I'm prepared to move forward with 6 members this evening, as opposed to the 7 members in an effort to try to move these along. And so I just wanted to put that on, because I know we have 6 members and at least we have, one excess. So again, I would at this point call Mr. Roberto Hernandez for testimony. Good evening, board. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Mr. Hernandez, can you please state your name, spell your last name?
Yes, Roberto Hernandez, R-O-B-E-R-T-O, Hernandez, H-R-N-A-N-D-E-Z.
Mr. Hernandez, swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You may proceed.
Yes, Mr. Hernandez, you are a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey? Yes. And in that capacity, you're familiar with the application for 75 Plum Street that's before the board this evening? Yes, I am. In fact, you worked on the plans and the development of the conversion into the 2-family residence. Is that correct? That is correct. I prepared the architectural plan. If you could then, could you please give the board the benefit of your professional qualifications and experience? Yes. From 2000 to 2011, I worked under Thomas Mayo Architect, who's now in Short Hills, New Jersey. I got my license in 2010, and I have been practicing since 2012. So now it's been 8 years almost. I would offer Mr. Hernandez as a qualified architect to provide testimony.
We'll accept him as a expert architect.
All right, thank you. Mr. Hernandez, if you might, again, I've identified the variances that we have. As you know, we have the exhibits that are posted for view by the public, and you can feel free to make reference to those plans. I know we want to be as limited as we can, but I would like you to go through the change in the property, the building, how the floor plan is laid out, and identify those the location of those bulk variances and explain them. Thank you. So let me start by, showing you what the front of the building looks like, which you have a picture from the planner's report on page 3. On page 3, you would see existing conditions of the front of the house. The house is metal siding. The windows have been removed, broken. It's an existing single-family home. Current built I am going to ask that you look at one of the 5 plans.
Excuse me, I'm having a little bit of a hard time hearing Mr. Hernandez.
Open up page A1 from the high plan.
Yeah.
Okay, so, on page A1, you would see the existing foundation plan of the building, 720 square feet. Now, can you hear me?
I am having a hard time hearing you. I don't know if anybody else is, but there's a lot of.
Hold on. All right, hold on 1 second. I have to, it's the public coming in. Will everybody on the public please mute your phones? We're getting a lot of feedback and talk going on, please. Thank you. Please go ahead, Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you. So I ask that you refer to page 8 of my architectural plan, which shows the current foundation plan or basement plan of the building. The house is a single-family home. It has an unfinished basement of 720 square feet. It has the first floor is constructed with over 260 square feet of wall space.
Come on. Okay. Oh, heat them up.
Excuse me, hold on 1 second again. Excuse me, the, people on the phone from the public, I need you to please mute your phones because we're having a hard time hearing the professionals talk because you're coming through. Please mute your phones at this time if you are not talking. Thank you. Please go ahead, Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you. So I ask that you refer to page A1 of my architectural plans, which is the basement plan. It's an existing unfinished basement with a ceiling height of 5 foot bathroom, is left unfinished, but it's the only bathroom on the first floor. On the front of the first floor, you would see the space of what right now is the existing uncovered porch. They're seeking to remove the uncovered porch and more habitable, a little bit more habitable space for the house so that.
Excuse me, Mr.
Hernandez,
Hernandez.
we had a technical issue, and so the public was dropped out for a few minutes. We're going to have to, Arvin, he'll need to walk back some of this stuff and start again?
Okay.
Yeah, why don't we start with the last exhibit that was introduced?
Which is the first floor plan. All right?
Which one?
First floor.
The first,
The first floor.
First floor floor plan.
first floor.
Yeah, that would be.
So I'm going to ask you to look at drawing 3A2, which is in the middle of page 18. In the lower section, there's a small plan, which I call it the first floor demolition plan. It's drawn on a 1/8 inch for the foot scale. This shows you that the current house condition, the existing first floor is 980 square feet. It is comprised of a front-facing living room, a kitchen, an existing one bedroom at this level, a rear bathroom, a rear sunroom, and a hallway with stairs leading to the second floor. Based on this layout, I can tell that at some point this may have been used as a two-family home, whether it was legal or not. At some point, it was reconverted into a single-family home, and now we are seeking to add a little bit more square footage to accommodate for a proposed two-family home. So one of the things that we did to buy a little bit more square footage was to remove the existing front porch. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so the first thing we did was remove the old porch and propose additional habitable square footage by squaring off the front section of the house. This allows me the vestibule area leading to the second floor apartment. The second floor are existing to remain. We added a front porch, which dimensions are 19'7" by 5 foot in depth. The front yard setback to the porch is at 10.51, where the minimum front yard setback required is 10. So the front porch, we are compliant with the proposed 10.51 front yard setback. Going back to drawing 3A2, which is on page 2. Ceiling height on that floor is 8'4". It is to remain. We have decided to reconstruct a little bit of the back portion of the first floor over the same existing crawl space. And the reason for that is because there was a sunroom there, and by the time you remove the windows, you are left with very little lumber. And now we're putting real walls with filling station and 2 sets of slider doors coming out of each of the bedrooms. So now the existing house is a 4-bedroom house. We are proposing 2 apartments, each apartment with 3 bedrooms and 3 private bathrooms. So now we're going to ask you to look at drawing 1A2 on page 18, which is the proposed first floor plan. So on the proposed first floor plan, you would see that we're proposing a brand new covered open porch. The porch size is 19'7" by 5 foot in depth. We're proposing an open concept for the dining, living room area, where the common area there is 334 square feet, and we meet the minimum requirement for common area on this floor. We have designed 3 bedrooms, so an increase of 2 from the 3 bedroom that we have at this floor. Each bedroom has a small private bathroom. They're all very typical 6 foot by 6 foot, with a corner shower, a toilet, and a sink. You would see that on the front of the building, he's located the refuse area, which we will discuss later on, because I think that's one of the comments that you have. Now I'm going to ask that we go to drawing 4H2, which shows the current second floor, which is right above the existing first floor. And so on the second floor is 713 square feet. Right now it is 3 bedrooms. 3 bedrooms, a hallway, and a front-facing bathroom. So we are redesigning the second floor. We are constructing a second floor over the existing first floor area, which currently in the back section, which is 1 story, we're constructing a second floor over that. We're not adding we're not adding any additional building coverage, because we're building on top, so that we can expand the square footage of the second floor, and again accommodate for 3 bedrooms with 3 private bathrooms, and again the open concept of the kitchen, living room space. The stairs that go down to the first floor are existing and are 2-lane. Each unit also has back washer dryer closet, and that basically avoids having to put a laundry on the first floor, which I think, based on the current height of the basement, we cannot even have a laundry room there. So each apartment has its own washer dryer unit closet. I'm going to ask now that we go to page 8.3 of my plans. On page 8.3, I am showing the proposed front of the house, which now you can compare to the existing house, which there's a picture of from the Department of Planning, Community, and Economic Development report. So you can compare both homes. On the proposed elevation, and to use hardy plank as the side material, vinyl siding on the sides. On the front, we're still introducing some cultured stone on the front wall of the first floor. And so we have slightly modified and improved the appearance of the house. Then on the back elevation, you can see that there's a proposed rear deck, and the dimensions of that deck or balcony is 20 feet 4.5 by 5 foot. On page A3, you would see the proposed elevation based on the additions that we're proposing. So on the first floor, we're only adding 36.2 square feet additional footprint, which is livable square footage. On the second floor, we're adding 303 square feet, which is over existing first floor footprint, whether it's in the front or in the back of the house. I don't know if there's any questions, if you have any questions at this point.
Does any member of the board have any questions for this witness?
No.
Seeing no
By
questions.
the way, each floor will have approximately just a little bit over 1,000 square foot each, including hallways and stairs and interior stairs.
Thank you. Any members of the board have any questions or comments? for this witness? Seeing none, Mr. Kelso, you can move on to your next witness.
Yeah, and just, before we move to, my planner, I just want to point out that in reviewing, the proposal and the bedroom count, we have agreed, to limit occupancy, to the overall building to 8 persons. And as you can see, we have about 3 bedrooms, floor, and those bedrooms has a bathroom. And so it's really kind of an upscale living situation. But we felt it was appropriate and requested this to limit the occupancy to 8. I would also, and Mr. Hernandez, if you clarify or explain the attic space, because there is attic space in the building itself, correct?
Yes, the attic is unfinished. It's uninhabitable. Whether you want to finish it or not, there's not enough height from the subfloor to the covered height, which is the horizontal that creates the T-frame inside of the roof. The ceiling height there is only 5'7", so you can't live in it. It's an existing unfinished attic, and it is to remain unfinished.
And the building height itself, based upon the plans that you've done, is not changing at all in this location.
That is correct. On the previous application, before we went with to the CRC board, we were proposing a third level, a finished attic level by raising knee walls. It was suggested that we didn't do that, so we removed it from the plans and we're back to the original roof and attic space.
Right. And that the roof height actually complies is right.
What was your question again? You're breaking up.
The height of the building conforms with the requirements of the zone.
Yes, it does.
Okay. And I pointed out in my thing the various existing conditions with regard to the setback, the combined setbacks, and the lot areas. That's all consistent. I mean, did I say anything that wasn't accurate when I pointed that out, where those variances are?
You were accurate in everything. The variances that we're here for, they're mostly pre-existing conditions. With regards to the floor area ratio, what I can say about it is that we do have a real hardship with the current lot area being less than 50% of what the minimum lot size in the R5A zone should be, which is 8,000 square feet. So that is a very big hardship. If we had an 8,000 square foot lot meeting the minimum requirements, the FAR would have not been an issue today.
But as it stands, the FAR increase is only actually by 0.09 from what's there today.
That is correct.
And if I might ask, the one parking space, where is that parking space located?
It is on the front left side of the property. It's an existing single car driveway. There isn't any space available for additional off-street parking, so we can only ask that and just keep one car driveway there.
Right. And again, 4 is the requirement for this type of proposal, correct?
4 is the requirement.
Again, I have no further questions for Mr. Hernandez.
Hey, Tom, John Cox, Chair. With the applicant, I'm not sure if they would be able to get more parking permits from the parking authority or not, but would they limit the amount of parking permits they get from the parking authority to what is currently at the site right now?
To limit it to what's at the site now?
Correct.
Yeah, we would do that. We would agree to limit the number of permitted to what's permitted. Correct.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay.
Any other board members have any comments or questions for this applicant? Seeing none, Tom, please call your next witness.
Yes, at this time, I would call Ms. Kate Keller for testimony.
Hi, hello, everybody. Good evening.
Hi.
Good.
Can you please state your name, spell your last name?
Sure, Kate Keller, last name is Keller.
Ms. Keller, do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
You may proceed.
Keller, you are a licensed professional planner of the state of New Jersey, is that correct?
Yes, I'm an associate principal with the firm of Phillips, Price, Weigel, and Hughes based in Hoboken. I'm a professional planner in the state of New Jersey and also have a license from the American Institute of Certified Planners.
I would offer Ms. Keller for testimony as a qualified.
We'll accept her as a qualified expert and as principal planner.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Rather than ask you specific questions, I'm going to ask you if you could go through your analysis of the variances that are being requested and hopefully provide the necessary support to convince the board to grant those variances.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. So as a professional planner, my review of this application was generally to review the appropriateness of the variance request from a planning perspective. In doing so, I inspected the site and the surrounding area, reviewed all the application material, and consulted with the professionals you've heard tonight. I heard a description of the project, but I will not repeat that. And as well, you have heard the variances that we're requesting this evening, which I will just go over again very briefly. To begin with, there are technically pre-existing conditions regarding the lot area and lot width that we are requesting variances for that are associated with the change of use, since those are slightly higher for a two-family use in this zone as than they are for a single-family use in the R5A zone. In addition, there are existing conditions that are not changing with regards to the side yard setback. And then we are requesting one new D4 variance for the aforementioned floor area ratio increase, in which 0.35 is the maximum permitted floor area in this zone, and the existing condition is 0.43. We are proposing at this time 0.52 to 1, which is an increase of, just as the architect testified to, is an increase of really just over 350 square feet. So it's very minimal in this context, and it really is, as I'll go forward in my testimony, really speaks to the small size of the lot that we're dealing with here. And then in addition, there are three bulk C variances that are being requested. One is for building coverage, which is very de minimis, which we are seeking 29.5%, where just over 27 exists and is permitted. Front yard setback to the porch, 5.5 feet will be the setback to the front porch, where 10 is required. And again, we're proposing one parking space where 4 is required for this 2 3-bedroom apartments in total per the city standards, which are based on the residential site improvement standards. So just briefly, I will start with the D4 variance. As to refresh the board's memory, the standard for granting FAR variances is set forth in the Randolph Town Center case, and this, much like height variances and density variances, it's on us to demonstrate that the site is capable of accommodating the greater floor area than what's permitted. So in this case, two-family are permitted use in the zone, and so the density that we're proposing is compatible with what's been recognized as appropriate for the area. And again, we meet the impervious coverage and the height requirements even with the undersized with the undersized lot. And as Mr. Hernandez said, we're really dealing with a very undersized lot here. It's half of what's required. So I think the fact that we're able to accommodate the fact that we're able to meet the coverage standard as well as the height, and it shows that the FAR can be accommodated here without impairing the zone plan or zoning ordinance. Again, this is also a house that's compatible with the neighborhood context. I did a brief review of the tax records in this area, and there are many two-family homes here, which is understandable because it's permitted use in this zone. And also, almost every lot is undersized on this block, and many are, many appear to be either at or above or area ratio we're proposing here, and so physically the site will be consistent with the surrounding neighborhood. So basically, just the general here is that applicants propose their permitted use, and it has significant aesthetic upgrades. The new facade and porch and landscaping that that Mr. Hernandez spoke to with the FAR that's generally consistent with the surrounding neighborhood. And I believe that this furthers purposes E and G of the municipal land use law, where we're rehabilitating housing in an appropriate location that's consistent with the city's goals, as the Re-Examination Report 2012, and it's also purpose I, that will enhance the visual and aesthetic character of the site. But for those reasons, I believe that the D4 FAR variance can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good or substantial impairment to the zone plan or zoning ordinance. And just to address the bulk variances, the first I'll talk about is the front porch. Will be located about 30 feet from the front yard property line, where 10 feet is required. This is really an aesthetic upgrade to the site that will allow a new access point from the front yard, and it's consistent with conditions of the block. I was unable to get exact measurements, but most of the houses on this side of the street do have very similar porches, and some go up to the sidewalk, and it's generally consistent with the street wall that's been provided here. And then next to this variance that we're requesting is for building coverage, which, as Mr. So alluded to in his introduction, is very minimal in this context, with we're really only adding a small addition in the front portion of the house. So we're adding just over 2%, where 20% is permitted, and it's about 7 square feet when you take into consideration the proposed new front porch and the new front yard addition, which will not be going further than the existing wall. It will be added to match the front wall. And so it will not create any negative visual impact or stormwater issues, and no detriment to the public good, as it's again consistent with the surrounding context. The last variance I will address is the parking spaces, where one is being provided as on the site, where 4 would be required. The existing space is about 30 feet long by 13 feet wide, which per the RSIS can accommodate 1 vehicle. So we're seeking a de minimis exception, as well as technically the C variance relief. I'm sure the board is aware the parking standard for the city is based on the statewide RSIS standard, which don't always reflect local conditions. And for that reason, the state gives municipalities great flexibility, so their language, to allow deviations from these requirements based on factors including household characteristics, availability of mass transit, and urban versus suburban locations, and other reasons. So this situation where residents, namely students, would not need a car to live in this location, where it's walking distance to campus and various transportation options, including shuttles, New Jersey Transit, train and bus service, and all kinds of different amenities that would be useful. And from a policy standpoint, it's good to, I think it's in a location like this that's very appropriate to go free. It tends to encourage residents to take advantage of that. From that, the granting of this variance will promote Purpose A of the MLUL, the guide that promotes with health, safety, and general welfare, and no potential detrimental impact to the public good. For tonight, the applicant has first agreed to limit the overall number of residents to 8 people across both units, and then second of all, they've just, as you just heard, have agreed to not request any additional parking permits over what is currently existing. So for all of these reasons, and generally, this is an upgrade to the existing site for permitted use. And I think that we're providing an acceptable level of parking given the surrounding context. I have nothing further unless the board or Mr. Kelso has any questions.
I have no further questions.
Any member of the board, have any questions or comments for this witness? Seeing none, I will open it up to the public.
Arvin, can I inject for a moment?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Kelso.
Yeah, just in reviewing the planning report that was provided to us, there were several items that we wanted to at least just address, and I neglected to ask Mr. Hernandez several of those questions. I would point specifically to item 3, which is a request that if testimony, if there is any new lighting that's being proposed, and I would ask Mr. Hernandez if the answer to this.
Yes, I did include lighting. So if you look at page A2, drawing 1A2, I added 3 lights in the ceiling of the new covered porch. Unless we're required to have some wall-mounted exterior lighting, I would need to have add that onto the drawing. But the exterior lighting that I have are 3 light fixtures in the ceiling of the new covered porch. You can see that on page 8, drawing 1A2.
So that is identified on the architectural plan?
Yes, it may have been missed when it was reviewed.
Okay. That item was confirmed with regard, this is item 4, with regard to the limited height in the attic, and the attic is not being utilized, and so we did provide that. The 2 other comments, 6 and 7, with regard to the screening of the mechanical equipment, and Mr. Hernandez, I assume that we can comply with that requirement?
Yes, we will comply with the evergreen planting, yes.
And then item number 7, with regard to the screening of the refuse area, that a form of decorative fencing be provided to screen refuse area, and I assume we're going to do that?
Yes, we will.
Okay, that's all I have, Marvin. I think all the rest of the planning report was just comments with regard to compliance with previous comments. And with that, that completes our presentation.
Okay. Does any board member have any questions or comments on anything that was just said before I open it up to the public? All right, seeing none. At this time, we are preparing to open the meeting to public comment on this specific hearing, specific items for 5 minutes per person. In order to assure that the zoning board can hear from the interested public and that the public can hear public comment, I will organize the speakers in order by last name. In a moment, I will unmute the public call-in. At that time, I will ask for those with the last name starting with A to provide me your last name, first name, and home address. I will confirm that the information is correct and then move on to the next person alphabetically from A to Z. Upon the completion of asking for all last names from A to Z, I will ask one more time for anyone who may want to be placed on the initial list of speakers. We will then move through the list of speakers by calling the person by name and permitting them 5 minutes to speak. Once we complete the list, we will once again check to see if anyone else would like to comment. After asking 3 times, I will then close the public portion. Please be mindful that your voice is being telephonically transmitted and to speak slowly and clearly to the benefit of all. I will ask that you please remain silent when I initially unmute the phone so that we can all hear each other and then begin the speaking registration process. The phone is now unmuted. I will ask that any member of the public on the phone who would like to comment on this specific ordinance with a last name starting with letter A, please state your full name and home address. Letter A, letter B, letter C, letter D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K.
Charlie Cradaville.
Thank you, Charlie. L, M, N O P Q R S T U V W X Y Z. Okay, Charlie, you are up for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. Other than the fact that the attorney for the applicant is also the attorney for the county government, my biggest concern with the application is parking. I used to live on this block. It is really bad, one of the worst in New Brunswick when it comes to finding a space on that particular street. The city's parking permit system is a mess, and because this area just so happens to be right on right near the border of the 5th and 6th Ward, it's really not a good situation for the folks on the 5th Ward side of things in terms of what a parking permit gets them. But nevertheless, I thought you, Mr. Chairman, asked a good question when you asked about were they willing to waive some of the parking permits, and I wasn't clear. The answer was they won't get any additional, but how many do they have now for this property?
I'm not sure. Charlie, this is John Cox, Chairman. I am not sure, and I don't know if Mr. Kelser or anyone has any at this time.
I don't have the exact number, but it was a single-family residence. So as a single-family residence, they would be entitled to whatever a single residence would get. That's what our intent is.
So you're suggesting it would double, but you're waiving the doubling.
Yeah, that's correct.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. I would respectfully ask, since there is an on-site parking space and there's not very much on-street parking, would the applicant be willing to forego the ones that they have? This was the house that for the longest time was owned by a couple that I think had 1 or 2 cars, and the block is it's only gotten harder and harder to park over the years. Would the applicant be willing to waive all parking permits for the site?
No, we've already indicated what we were willing to do at the request of the board.
Okay, well, I would encourage the board to, ask for more, because the parking situation is bad there, and giving permits out to people doesn't create spaces. Those permits aren't going to be very worthwhile anyway, but it will put people under the false impression that they might be able to find parking when they sign up for a lease there, hearing, oh, I'm going to get parking permits. You might as well just waive them, and I would encourage the board to ask that from the applicant. The applicant is asking you for quite a bit here, and I'm not against the project itself and expanding the house, but I do think that they could do more to mitigate the parking problem. If they're supposed to have 4 spaces, well, they have 1, and they could make up for it by giving up the 3 permits they have now, which I believe is the way it works. So that's just my request. I would hope that the board would ask that. I don't expect Mr. Kelso to do it for me, but maybe he'll do it for you.
Thank you, Charlie. Is that it?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you very much. At this time, I'm going to just check to see if anyone else from the public that was not on the initial list would like to speak on this application. Number 2 going. Again, anyone from the public that may have missed putting their name on a list, care to speak at this portion of the meeting? Last call for public comment on this application. Seeing no more, we're going to close the public portion of the meeting. Mr. Kelso, do you have anything else you'd like to say?
Nothing further. We submit to the board based on our testimony.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pelto. Any board member have any questions or comments at this time, or discussion about this, application? Seeing none, Kate, you wanna, go through what we will, what is needed in order to make a motion on this, application?
Yes, this is Katie, Principal Planner for the City of New Brunswick. Arvind, I just had a quick question before I go through. I wanted to make sure, we want the occupancy to be, on the deed restriction, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would recommend to the board that it be a maximum number as part of the deed restriction, and that the applicant agree to indicate that in a lease.
We have no objection to that.
All right. Okay, should the board, act favorably on this application, we recommend the following conditions of approval shall apply. Payment of a site performance bond in an amount reviewed and approved by the city engineer. Submission of a site inspection escrow deposit for engineering inspection fees in an amount calculated pursuant to Title 1624-160. Payment of all water and sewer connection fees pursuant to Titles 1304 and 1308. Issuance of a road opening permit from the city engineer if required. The applicant shall schedule a pre-construction meeting with the city engineering department. Compliance with the terms of the city planning report dated April 29th, 2020 for the above project. Payment of any other fees due to the city of New Brunswick related to development or use of this project. Payment of all outstanding taxes and water, sewer fees. Middlesex County Planning Board approval or waiver. Freehold Soil Conservation District approval or waiver. Submission of architectural plans to comply with any changes required by the planning or engineering memos or plan amendments offered at the hearing, if any. All utilities and other site improvements be maintained by the applicant at their sole expense. All on-site utilities to be constructed underground. All temporary encroachments into the public right-of-way shall require city council approval. All construction staging shall be done on site unless an encroachment allowing into the public right-of-way is approved by the city council. Streets shall be kept clean of sediment and debris. The applicant shall cause the streets to be cleaned if directed to do so by the Director of Public Works. Tracking pads shall be installed at all construction exits. Replacement of damaged streets, curbs, and sidewalks as per the direction of the city engineer. The applicant shall limit the occupancy to 8 persons. This shall be recorded on the deed restriction and as well as included in any lease. And the applicant shall limit the number of city parking permits to that which is currently permitted. That's all I've got.
Any board member like to make a motion?
This is John Zimmerman. I'll make a motion to approve the application.
Anyone want a second?
Evelyn Ascona, I'll second.
Okay.
Roll call.
Christian Sumano.
Here.
Nope.
Nope.
It's
Yes.
Evelyn Ascona.
His iPhone is nearby.
Yes.
John Zimmerman.
Yes.
Carla Castaneda.
Yes.
Michael Belvin.
Yes.
John Cox.
Yes.
Okay.
Congratulations, Tom.
Thank
What can I cut out? All right. Hey, Tom, can we just take a quick 2-minute break real quick? And I'll be right back.
Sure, no.
All right, thank you, guys.
No problem.
All right, I'll be muting both lines. Okay, and we're back. Aravind, do we need to redo roll?
Yeah, since we just take a break, they'll have to go through roll again.
That's fine. Not a problem. Kristen Sumano?
Here.
Evelyn Escona?
Here.
Charlotte McNair? Beverly Sanchez? John Zimmerman?
Here.
Sue McElligott? Carla Castaneda?
Here.
Michael Belvin?
Here.
Ivan Adorno? Nancy Coppola? John Cox?
Here.
Okay. Oh,
Raritan Heights, Phase 2 LLC, 19 US Highway 1, Block 703, Lot 17.02, ZB-2017-07. Amended site plan application with bulk variances for a previously approved mixed-use development. The applicant is seeking approval for the following changes: reconfiguration of parking lot, reconfiguration of a retaining wall, removal of several parking stalls, relocation of electric vehicle charging stations, modifications of accessible routes, and update site landscaping, zone district C-5. Tom Kelso, you're up.
Mr. Calso?
He's on mute. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Go ahead, you're up.
Thomas F. Kelso on behalf of the applicant, Raritan Heights Phase 2 LLC. Am I getting feedback or what?
Yeah, you're cutting in and out, Tom.
Okay. We are before the board this evening seeking amended site plan for those various items that were identified in the introduction. And the board is familiar with this site, I'm sure. This is the commonly known as the agency theater site. I'm getting a lot of feedback myself.
I actually see a lot of unmuted phones, so maybe if everybody can mute except Mr. Calso.
I'll keep trying. Again, a number of these changes are changes that are being requested by the applicant as a result of conditions in the field and really getting feedback. I'll keep going. I'll make it brief. In addition to the changes that were identified in the application, we also have a number of variances that are being requested. The first is an impervious coverage slight change of 81.27%, whereas 75% is permitted. The board should be aware that there is already 80.54% impervious coverage, so the increase is really one of less than 1%. Secondly, the two freestanding signs along site frontage and two development name signs, which is a total of 4 signs, whereas a maximum of 2 signs are permitted. And finally, a parking variance. There are a minimum requirement of 1,539. We had originally indicated the reduction to 1,533. However, as our testimony will see this evening, as a result of changes that were requested by the city for the new circle that was being installed, I think it's roundabout as well, there has been a loss of additional 20 parking spaces in order to accommodate and meet code based on the city's comments with regard to that. However, we feel it's a de minimis change considering that we are still proposing 1,513 spaces, all of which are ready. So that's an overview of the application. I think the board will be aware that a lot of the residential buildings are completed now and are about ready to commence occupancy. This is also the location where the Starbucks was the most recent addition to the site, which is now open and operating. I'm going to call three witnesses for you this evening. First, Mr. Ron Hollenbach, who's the Director of Engineering, Planning, and Development for Edgewood Properties, which is the principal developer of the site. Mr. Carl Hickey, who is a traffic consultant, who assisted us in the review of the design of the roundabout, which was requested by the city. And then finally, Ms. Christine Cafone, who is our professional planner, for offer testimony with regard to the. With that as an overview, I'm ready to call witnesses.
Please call your first witness.
At this time, I have a call, Mr. Ronald Hollenbach for testimony.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hollenbach, you are I think I stated correctly, the Director of Engineering and Development for Edgewood Property?
I am.
And in that capacity, you are familiar with the development of all of the different improvements that have been done over the years on the Raritan Heights site, or the ANC site, as I like to call it.
Yes, I am.
And I believe that you have actually provided testimony previously before this board with regard to the previous approvals and amendments to the approvals, and in that capacity, you're familiar with everything.
I am.
I think he's testifying as a factual witness, Arvin, so that he can provide that testimony, not as a professional engineer.
I understand. Mr. Chairman, his testimony is not offered as that as an expert in the field of engineering. He is a fact witness and has firsthand knowledge of the site and the plans that were submitted in the application. Is that correct?
That's correct. Then, Mr. Hollenbach, why don't you take the opportunity, without me prompting you with questions, to go through the various changes to the site plan that we are requesting. And I think you can probably also provide some background with regard to the variances and the parking variances, and then we'll, supplement that with Mr. Pankey's testimony.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity.
Excuse me, I'm going to need to swear you in. Can you please state your name, spell your last name?
Sure. It's Ronald Hollenbach, Aullenbach.
Okay. Mr. Hollenbach, do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Again, as Mr. Kelso indicated, I'm the Director of Engineering, Planning, and Development for Edgewood Properties, the parent company. I testified in front of this board. I've been familiar with this site really since its inception, going back years ago when we originally came in and got the approvals, as well as what we're currently proposing now. Mr. Kelso indicated the first phase of the residential building just recently received, I think either last Thursday or Friday, their first PO. So we're looking to keep moving forward on the project. What this application before you tonight is about is probably the biggest change to the site plan is the introduction of a traffic circle as you come in off of Route 1 at the main entrance, where there used to be a four-way intersection. We're looking to introduce a circle for some traffic calming. That circle ends up initiating some additional site plan changes that Mr. Kelso touched on, based on some of the comments we had gotten from the board and the city's professionals. We are looking to make this a gated community, so there's a series of automatic gates and fencing that will secure the residential portion of it, and I'll go into a little more details of how that gating functions. We're proposing two development monument signs as you come off through the circle, again introducing the residential portion of the project. There are existing signs for the retail tenants on Route 1. These are just two additional ones that really just take the edge at Raritan Heights. which is the name of the project. So just for the residential portion only. In the back left corner of the site, there was previously some parking spaces. If you're familiar with the site, there is a significant drop off in the back as it goes to the Raritan River. To avoid some construction issues that we had in the back left corner, we were moving spaces back there to install a different type of retaining wall that, from our geotechnical engineer, acted as a better security to protect the site. Several parking spaces, ADA stalls, some things have been shifted around based on the new layout. We did also relocate electric charging station spaces from against the building to across the drive aisle. As Mr. Councilman indicated, and Carl touched on the overall parking reduction and variance, and then Christine will finish up with that. But I would like to talk about the automatic gates, because it did come up in the professionals' letters, and based on our conversation with the city and the city's professionals, and also building and fire, everybody involved, there's 5 ways for these gates to operate. Resident gets an electric reader that's installed in their car, similar to Easy Pass, so as they drive up, the gate opens. The resident also gets a physical fob key that when they pull up, they swipe it and that area will open up the gate. The city had requested several changes for the emergency vehicles, so the system is equipped with a squelch system, so that if a police, EMS, or fire truck pull up, they simply hit the siren, the gate opens. They also requested a Knox box with a fob key in it. And lastly, they also asked if we could install a keypad, so the city has a four-digit code for themselves, that they can just pull up and put the code in and the gate opens. So there's multiple layers here of how this gating system works, so that not only our residents can get in, but obviously emergency personnel can access the residential portion of it. One of the other questions that came up as it relates to the circle was adjusting the geometry to better be in line with national standards. And I'll let Carl go into that in more detail, but that is what resulted in some of the additional parking reduction. I know Carl talked about this, the center portion of the island will need to be hardscape, no landscaping, because any larger vehicles will actually ride over the mountable curb. But I'll let Carl go into that. And obviously, whatever wayfinding signs that Carl and the township professionals feel are appropriate for a circle will obviously comply with. I believe that's my summary, Tom.
Okay, I'm just looking to see if we covered everything. I think that's true. All right, I have no further questions for Mr. Roth.
Any member of the board have any questions or comments for this witness? Seeing none, Tom, you can call your next witness.
Yes, at this time I would call Mr. Carl Pankey.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Carl, you're a licensed professional engineer of state of New Jersey, is that correct?
Yes, for the record, again, my name is Carl Penke. I am a registered professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. I'm employed by Langen Engineering and Environmental Services. My license is in good standing, and my area of expertise is traffic engineering, which I've been practicing for over 35 years, and I've appeared before this board on prior occasions.
Go ahead.
Can you please say your name, spell your last name so I can swear you in?
It's Carl with a K, Penke, P as in Peter, E-H-N-K-E. Mr. Chairman,
Penke, do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth?
Arvin, just hold on one second.
Arvin, let me finish swearing him in.
Yeah, we're finishing swearing him in.
Mr. Penke, do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
You may proceed, Arvin. Your go.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, this is Arvin. As Mr. Pankey has appeared before this board on a number of occasions, and he's been accepted on several occasions as an expert in the field of traffic engineering. As long as his credentials have not changed, I'd ask that the chair consider accepting him as an expert.
We'll accept him as a expert in the field of traffic planning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, and Mr. Pankey, if you might, I know that, Ron gave, kind of an intro to your testimony, but I'd like you to focus your testimony with regard to the roundabout, fixes that are being called for here. And if you could go and cover certain other questions that were with regard to signage, and then if you could review that detail. And then also if you could address the reduction of parking.
Certainly. So by way of background, I have been involved with this project since probably the mid-1990s when we first started to redevelop it, and have appeared on most of the amendments that have occurred through the years as we've gotten to the project that's currently under construction in the field. For this application, I had an opportunity to review the professional comments prepared by Mr. Bignell, Mr. Burke, and Mr. Cartley in their March and May memorandums. I would say that common questions or comments that were raised by the professionals had to do mostly with providing additional detailing and specific construction items associated with the mini roundabout feature that we are providing on this site following a Federal Highway Administration guidance. So the feature that Ron alluded to in his testimony is on the main entry or the northern driveway as you come in from Route 1. And what is today a simple four-way intersection is proposed to be improved and developed into an entry feature and traffic calming feature and traffic operational feature, which is deemed in traffic engineering to be a mini roundabout. It is designed for the low-speed type environment within a residential mixed-use development such as this, and there are very specific criteria that is in the guidance documents by the Federal Highway Administration as to the design. We would agree as a condition of this approval to provide those additional details on the plans in accordance with the design criteria, which include the details of the median circular island, which, as Mr. Allenbach indicated, is a paved area, treated area that an emergency vehicle can easily overrun, or a larger delivery vehicle can easily overrun, which is intended, but does provide both a visual cue and a physical cue for motorists such as automobiles and smaller vehicles to circulate the roundabout as intended. There are also other elements of a mini roundabout that include pedestrian crossing and accommodations on each of the approaches that are set back a particular distance from the roundabout, as well as splitter islands on the approaches and signage that meet the requirements of the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. I have worked recently with EP Design Services, the designer for this site, to incorporate those features on the site plans, and as I said, as a condition of approval, we'll provide those details to Mr. Burke and Mr. Carley for their final review, and I'm sure we'll meet with their approval from that standpoint. We will provide for full pedestrian accommodation and ADA accommodation crossings to ensure that there are proper accessible routes through the roundabout. As a result of the final detailing of the roundabout, as indicated earlier, we do trigger the need for a very minor parking variance. The current site plan as proposed with the residential units, the theater, the restaurants, and the Starbucks requires, per the city ordinance, 1,533 spaces be provided on the site. We are proposing, at the end of the day, 1,511, or a difference of 22 spaces. Those lost spaces are predominantly on the outskirts or just surrounding the intersection, what is the four-way intersection today, which I'm sure everybody that's on this phone call is familiar with. They would be pretty much the remotest parking spaces from any of the buildings and the last use, and really are spaces that are not material to the operation of the site. I would suggest respectfully to the board that the loss of 22 spaces out of 1,500 spaces is really de minimis and does not represent any problem whatsoever in this site operating. Anybody that's been familiar with this site and the theater certainly knows that parking has not been a problem with the theater. We know it won't be a parking for the residential, and hopefully with successful tenancies with restaurants, we're confident that the number of parking spaces per ordinance and around those buildings will be sufficient to operate the use. I would know that this is a mixed-use environment, and that does also provide the additional fact that some of these uses can share into the spaces during the off-peak period. So we actually have more than abundance of parking spaces on this site. So overall, I believe that the introduction of the mini roundabout is actually appropriate for this site. I think it will be actually an attractive addition to an entry feature for the site. It certainly will accommodate in a good fashion the traffic flows to the various uses on this site. Will operate as intended with a traffic calming feature, and I think will be an actual nice amenity on this site. And the de minimis loss of parking, I do not believe will be detrimental. Certainly will have no impact on the adjoining properties or adjacent street system. And we're confident that the parking being provided on this site will support the success of the uses on this site.
I have no further questions for Mr. Pankey.
Does any member of the board have any questions or comments for Mr. Pankey? Seeing none, Tom, you can move on to your next witness.
Yes, at this time, I will call Ms. Christine Cafone for testimony.
Good evening, Christine Cafone, professional planner.
Can you please say your name and spell your last name?
Yes, it's Christine Cafone, C-O, F as in Frank, O-N-E. Business address is 125 Half Mile Road, Suite 200, Red Bank, New Jersey, 07701.
Thank you, Ms. Cafone.
Christine, you are a licensed professional planner of the state of New Jersey, and we all know that, I guess. Could you give the board the benefit of your professional qualifications and experience?
Hey, Tom.
Yes, good evening.
Ms. Cafone, if I could just interrupt you for a second.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Cafone has appeared before this board a number of occasions, and her credentials have been accepted by this board as an expert in the field of planning. I would ask if her qualifications have not changed, that she be accepted again as expert.
Yes, I'll accept her as an expert, and Dan still has to swear her in.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Cafone, do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
You may proceed.
So the variances that have been identified with respect to the parking in this application, in my opinion, can be granted under the C2 statutory criteria, applying purpose H of the land use law, which talks about promoting the free flow of traffic. As Mr. Pankey testified, the deficiency of 22 spaces is really de minimis in light of the overall obligation of 1,500 parking spaces. It represents 0.014% of the parking obligation on the site. Moreover, they are the outlier spaces, and as he testified, and I agree from a planning point of view, those that are least likely to be utilized and the most remote on the site. So I think certainly when you look at the fact that the subject property is in the C5 zone, the stated purpose, which is to provide for the development of regional uses which are appropriate along major arterials, and you look at the fact that the improvements that are proposed in conjunction with this application will actually facilitate the free flow of traffic, criteria H of the land use law, and the fact that when you apply the negative criteria, the fact that you are asking the applicant not to be held that there's no detriment, just that the detriment's not substantial, that such a de minimis deviation from the parking standards and such outlier remote parking spaces, you can conclude that there's no substantial detriment. And that the application can be granted, like I said, under the C2 statutory criteria. The positive criteria are satisfied, as well as the negative criteria. And we certainly meet the intent of the zone plan for the C5 zoning district. That pretty much sums up my direct testimony. If anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Christine.
You're welcome.
Does any member of the board have any questions or comments for this witness? Seeing none. Tom, you have anything else at this time?
I just, there's one question that Bignell had in his report, and I think that Mr. Oliver may have the answer. And that is under his comment H. He was asking the question with regard to the change, the FAR, and I think it was 8,412 square feet. I think we may have answered this at the TAC meeting, but it's still in the report. So I thought maybe I would ask Mr. Hollenbach again.
Yeah, Tom, we talked about this at the TAC. We had added some amenity space in the basement, and that's where the additional square footage came from.
Okay. I thought we had put it in the TAC, but I did see it still. That completes our presentation.
All right, thank you. At this time, we're preparing to open the meeting to public comment on this specific hearing, specific items for 5 minutes per person. In order to assure that the zoning board can hear from the interested parties of public and that the public can make public comment, I will organize the speakers in order by last name. In a moment, I will unmute the public call-in. At that time, I will ask for those with the last name starting with A to provide me your last name, first name, and home address. I will confirm that the information is correct and then move on to the next person alphabetically from A to Z. Upon the completion of asking for all last names from A to Z, I will ask one more time for anyone who may want to be placed on the initial list of speakers. We'll then move through the list of speakers by calling the person by name and permitting them 5 minutes to speak. Once we complete this, we will ask again to check to see if anyone else would like to comment. After asking 3 times, I will then close the public comment portion. Please be mindful that your voice is being telephonically transmitted and to speak slowly and clearly for the benefit of all. I will ask that you please remain silent when I initially unmute the phone so that we can all hear each other and then begin the speaker registration process. The phone is now unmuted. I will ask that any member of the public on the phone that would like to comment on this specific ordinance with a last name starting with the letter A, please state your full name and home address. Letter A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L,
Yes, please, Charlie Cradaville.
All right, thank you, Charlie. L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. Going to ask one more time, anyone from the public that I may have missed who would like to speak on this application, please state your name. Seeing none, we'll call the first public. Charlie Cradaville, your time starts now for 5 minutes.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I have to start with a question about document in the packet. Resolution Z-2011-5 states the board attorney, Aravind Ithal, recused himself from participation in the application and was replaced. The applicant appears to be the same. Their attorney appears to be the same. Can Mr. Ithal recall why he abstained or why he recused, and whether the same reason still might apply today?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
I believe that the refusal was I know it's been over a year, perhaps close to 2 years ago. My firm had represented at that time the parent company for this applicant. My firm does no longer represent the applicant, and more than a year has passed, so I do not believe there's a conflict.
Thank you.
And that standard of 1 year, does that come from any case law or statute?
Mr. Ithal, do you know if there's a statute of the 1 year? That was the question.
I'm not aware of any statute now.
Okay, thank you.
So it's Mr. Ithal's position that any client that he's had in the past can come before him at this hearing, and he does not need to recuse himself if it's been more than a year since his representation. Is that his view?
Mr. Ithal, is that your view that as long as it's after a year that you'll be able to? That was Mr. Cradaville's question to you.
Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, I'm not really sure that that's relevant to this application. I've already answered the question with regards to this application.
Okay, thank you. Charlie, you have any
Well,
other
I think the public and the board would want to know what the views are of their attorney about conflict of interest and when a recusal is necessary. This member of the public certainly would like to know. Can he tell us how long ago it was? Was it 1 year and 1 day, or was it 10 years ago that his firm represented Edgewood?
Mr. Chairman, I'll answer this question again. I know it was more than a year, and I said that it could possibly have been as close to 2 years ago. My firm did any work with the applicant's parent company. They have not done any work for that period of time.
Thank you, Mr. Ithal.
I don't believe that there's a conflict.
Thank you, Mr. Ithal.
Okay, well, I would beg to differ, and I will want to lodge this objection on the record that I don't believe Mr. Ithal should be representing this board. I don't believe that a full and fair hearing can take place with this conflict, first of all, not disclosed, and I had to dig this up in the documents to even bring this to your attention, board. So I would ask you, Mr. Chairman, if you agree with me, would you be willing to suspend the hearing and get a new attorney that doesn't have this issue?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes,
I think Mr. Cradaville is maybe not understanding that I have in the past recused myself when the firm that I work for has represented this applicant, and I put that on the record. The fact that Mr. Cradaville feels that he's dug it up, I'm not really sure that he really can take credit for digging up something that's a matter of public record. As far as whether this board is properly represented, I do not have a relationship, a professional relationship, where I represent the applicant or the applicant's parent company. My firm has not represented them for over a year, close to 2 years. There is no...
So one to 2 years. Okay, I think that's not quite long enough. But that's my view. You're entitled to your view. I just appealed to the chair, and I asked the chair to suspend the hearing. Are you willing to do that, Chair?
I'm not willing to do that. I'm going on the advice of our attorney.
Okay, well, I would shy away from taking his advice on this particular matter, with all due respect to all involved. I'll move on. The fact that this is going to be gated, are these apartments already open? Do the people there want gates?
I'll answer, it's not open yet. They're just getting COs now.
Okay. Gotcha. So no one's living there. Just so I'm clear, this is the same firm that built Fulton Square in New Brunswick, and was just before the Housing Authority the other day to expand that. When Fulton Square was built, wasn't that supposed to be a gated community? Did that work out? Are the gates functioning there at Fulton Square?
I see no relevancy to what's occurring at Fulton Square, and we're not going to answer that question.
Okay, well, I would raise to the attention of everyone who's listening that Fulton Square promised people a gated community, and then the gates were a miserable failure, and they've been open for years. I don't support having the gates, but they sold people homes under the impression that they were going to have a gated community, and then they failed to deliver that. So just as soon as I heard that they want to do a gated community here on Route 1, I immediately a red flag was raised because they have a poor track record, and any one of you on your way home tonight can see for yourself, go down Remsen Avenue or Commercial Avenue and drive right into Fulton Square. Unless you want to correct me and tell me I'm wrong, that is the current status. You applied to the city to have a gated community, and then you didn't deliver on it. You broke your promise. So I would view this as something the board should be skeptical of, and I hope that the board agrees. I think common sense would dictate that you can look at the track record of the same developer in the same town trying to do the same thing and not delivering. That's a concern. Consistency is key here, and unfortunately, the same is true of the other major project that this developer's undertaken in the Walgreens shopping center, which so much of the promises there have been broken for housing and supermarkets, and now it's in limbo whether or not they might do a school. But Kelso was telling me last week that it's going to still be a fast food joint and some housing.
Ollie, can we please stick to the application at hand? Those other projects have no bearing on this application. Please stick to this application and this application only.
Thank you. That's all I wanted to say on those other applications, but I still think you should consider it. It's common sense to look at the same applicant doing the same thing in the same city. My concerns also stem from the lack of public transportation at this site. It's nice that you're doing some electric vehicle charging stations, but there's still no component for any public transportation. Is that true?
I'll answer that on behalf of Ron Allenbeck from Bratton Heights Phase 2. There's public transportation proposed other than what's already available now.
Okay, so no component for that. The retaining wall situation, how bad is it there? I know it looks bad. Can you tell me, is there any danger to the public or to the people there of this retaining wall giving out?
No. The retaining wall is simply redesigned to pull away from the slope to have a better design at back left-hand corner.
Okay. So, I mean, those are my main concerns here. I know that the building is built, and I see it from the highway. It looks nice from afar. I think it'll look a lot less nice with some big gates outside to keep people out. And I don't think there's a real need to keep people out. This is not, an area that has a lot of people. And I don't think that it's wise to embark on a gated apartment community in this area, especially given what a miserable failure the last time this developer tried to do a gated community. And again, just drive past it yourself, guys. You know the city just as well as I do probably, and you know that Fulton Square that was a shortcoming of it. That was a broken promise of it. And if you look at this developer's track record, they have a history of broken promises like many of Mr. Kelso's clients, and they're not the type of people the zoning board should be bending over backwards to give variance after variance after variance to keep letting them get what they want. We don't need another gated community in New Brunswick, and this is not a good move for the city. And I think that, especially these days, urban planning experts would tell you that gates are not good. We don't need to build more walls and keep people out. I don't know if any of the people here can weigh in on that, but I don't think this is a good move, and I haven't heard any justification in the testimony to support that. I didn't hear any reason given, so unless I hear a reason, I'm not going to support that, and I don't think that the board should support that, and I hope that some members will be brave and push back. Yes, Kelso's a powerful guy. Yes, Jack Morris is a powerful guy, but they shouldn't get to just do whatever they want. There's laws here, and you're in charge of enforcing those laws, and I think this is a bad plan, at least the part with the gates, and I think you can do something about it. You're empowered to do it. I hope you will. Thank you.
All right, at this point, we have no one else on the list, but we're going to ask one more time. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak specifically to this application? Going to ask one more time. Any other member on the phone that would like to speak about this application? Last time calling for any member of the public who would like to speak on this application. Seeing none, the public portion of this meeting is closed. Mr. Kelso, do you have a summarization?
No, we submit to the board based upon our testimony.
Thank you very much. Board discussion? Any member of the board have discussion or anything to say on this application? Hearing none. Kate, conditions for approval, if a motion is made?
Yes, this is Katie Pinello, Principal Planner for the City of New Brunswick. Should the board act favorably on this application, we recommend the following conditions of approval apply. Compliance with the terms of the DNR engineer report dated May 1st, 2020 for this project. Payment of a site performance bond in an amount reviewed and approved by the city engineer. Submission of a site inspection escrow deposit for engineering inspection fees in an amount calculated pursuant to Title 1624-160. Payment of all water and sewer connection fees pursuant to Titles 1304 and 1308. Issuance of a road opening permit from the city engineer if required. The applicant shall schedule a pre-construction meeting with the city engineering department. Compliance with the terms of the Bignell Consulting Group report dated April 30th, 2020 for the above project. Planning review escrow funded for all anticipated post-approval reviews. Payment of all outstanding taxes and water sewer fees. Middlesex County Planning Board approval or waiver. Freehold Soil Conservation District approval or waiver. Compliance with the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection Waterfront Development Act required. Submit engineering or architectural plans to comply with any changes required by the planning or engineering memos or plan amendments offered at the hearing, if any. Compliance with the conditions of the prior approval associated with Zoning Board 2017-07 as memorialized on September 25th, 2017. All utilities and other site improvements to be maintained by the applicant at their sole expense. All on-site utilities to be constructed underground. All temporary encroachments into the public right-of-way shall require City Council approval. All construction staging shall be done on-site unless an encroachment into the public right-of-way is approved by City Council. Streets shall be kept clean of sediment and debris. The applicant shall cause the streets to be cleaned if directed to do so by the Director of Public Works. Tracking paths will be installed at all construction exits. And replacement of damaged streets, curbs, and sidewalks per the direction of the city engineer. And that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Do I have a motion from a board member?
Question Sumano, I'll make a motion. To approve.
Motion to what?
Approve. John Coxell, second.
Kristen Sumano?
Yes.
Evelyn Ascona?
Yes.
John Zimmerman?
Yes.
Carla Castaneda?
Yes.
Michael Belvin,
Yes.
John Cox.
Yes. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, members of the board. I appreciate your patience and understanding.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay. At this time, we're preparing to open the meeting to the general public. Anyone from the, hold it, comments for 5 minutes per person in order to assure that the zoning board can hear from the interested public and that the public can hear public comment. I will organize the speakers in order by last name in a moment. I will unmute the public call-in. At this time, I will ask for those with the last name starting with A to provide me your last name, first name and home address. I will confirm that the information is correct and then move on to the next person alphabetically from A to Z. Upon the completion of asking for all the names from A to Z, I will ask one more time for anyone who may want to be placed on the initial list of speakers. We will then move through the list of speakers, calling the person by name and permitting them 5 minutes to speak. Once we complete the list, once we complete the list, we will once again check to see if anyone else would like to comment. After asking 3 times, I will then close the public comment portion. Please be mindful that your voice is being telephonically transmitted and to speak slowly and clearly for the benefit of all. I will ask you that you please remain silent when I initially unmute the phone so that I can hear each other and then begin to speak the speaker registration process. The phone is now unmuted. I will ask that any member of the public on the phone that would like to comment on a specific, on anything with a last name starting with the letter A, please state your full name and address. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L,
Yes,
M.
please, Charlie Cradaville. Sorry.
All right. That's all right, thank you. L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, W, X, Y, Z. I've gone through the entire alphabet prior to me reviewing the list of speakers. I would like to ask if there is anyone who has not made themselves known would now like to speak in the public portion of this, on this, of anything. Anyone else? Again, prior to me reviewing the list of speakers, I would like to ask if there is anyone who has not made themselves known, would now like to speak. Please state your name. Hearing no additional requests for speakers, the speaking order will be Charlie Cradwell. Charlie, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Disappointed tonight to not see any votes against the 2 projects, the first one and the third one, and also disappointed that Mr. Reithal did not recuse on that matter, but you can trust that I'll be following up on those. I do want to thank the planning director for being so responsive and keeping me in the loop about these meetings. I know this is a new setup we've got going, and I did want to, again, extend my offer to discuss with him ways that these meetings can maybe go smoother. I know you're using software called WebEx, the same software that I think's been in use at city council meetings here, and unfortunately tonight we had technical difficulties that led to a late start. We had people who weren't able to put themselves on mute, and it was hard for people to hear. We had issues with feedback, and some people it was throwing some people off, and I can say for the record that I dropped off the call entirely for several minutes for no apparent reason, and something had to be changed to get the public back on the call, and then people had to do things over again. So I would just respectfully submit that the WebEx solution that's been in use for these past 2 zoning board meetings is probably not the best solution, and there are other governments using other tools to have more engaging meetings with the public in these times. As I pointed out last time, these planning and zoning matters lend themselves to visuals, and if the expert, the witnesses were able to point to a visual and show you what they're talking about, the audience would be able to comprehend better what's going on. I tried my best to follow along with the documents on the website, and I think I did a fine job. But at the end of the day, if I had the experts showing me what they're talking about instead of having to find it in all these documents, it would be easier for me to comprehend and easier for others to comprehend too. So I would urge you, if you are going to have another meeting without using the City Hall room and without getting the public together in person, that you pursue a different solution, one that's maybe a little more 21st century and a little less like a 1990s conference call. And I mean that with all respect to you guys. I know it's a difficult time. This is uncharted waters, so I'm just offering my assistance to help, because I was able to broadcast this entire meeting on the New Brunswick Today Facebook page and did my best to put up a few visuals for people to try to follow along what's going on. But the technology does exist, and it could be better, and I think it should be better, because here in New Brunswick we should be on the cutting edge and we should use all the tools available to us. And I just finally wanted to close by saying that, and when we look back on some of these votes, when we're driving down Route 1 and we see this, ugly gates at the front of a nice apartment building, or we see this big, bright sign on Hamilton Street shining into people's homes, and Mr. Kelso's office. I was just joking when I said I hope that it points in his office. I think that no one deserves to have this unnecessary signage, lighting up their homes all into the night. And when we look back on this, we're going to think, wow, that was during the coronavirus that got rushed through in a telephone meeting. It was a special meeting set up for 3 of Mr. Kelso's clients. I don't know any other attorney that's been able to get, such special treatment from the city, and I don't think it's right. I don't think he should be representing clients at this board. He has a job. He is our representative in the county government, and he should be focused entirely on that job, not taking on these conflicts where he represents all the big developers. And it's just not right. I think that people need to take a stand against this. I know that it's not necessarily within your power to tell him that he can't come before this board, but I want everybody who's listening to know that it's wrong. He should be serving the public. If he wants to make his money in the private sector, he can leave the public job and do that, but he is paid handsomely to be our representative. He has immense power, being the lawyer for the freeholders and the entire county government, an enormous operation that's supposed to put our interests first, but we've seen time and time again that Mr. Kelso is representing the interests of the big developers first, and then the county maybe second. And I don't think that it's right, and I don't think that this board should bend over backwards for him or his clients. And I got to be honest, I don't like the attitude of constantly dismissing things that I bring up or others bring up about Kelso and his clients. I think there's a lot of relevancy to the matters that I asked about, especially the failure of Fulton Square to deliver on what they promised. And ultimately, we need to hold everyone accountable, especially the powerful, especially the lawyers like Mr. Kelso who play it both ways and do this public-private thing where they can decide what matters most to them and put those interests first. And certainly developers like Edgewood Properties that have repeatedly come before this board and the planning board, promised things and broken those promises. I think that it's a disgrace what's happened with their two projects, Fulton Square and the Walgreens site, this being the only decent project they had, and now they're coming back to you and getting you to approve a gate out front of it. My goodness, we do not need that, and I think deep down in your hearts, certainly the people who have planning expertise probably realize that this is not good for the community. This is not the type of inclusive development that we want to be having in our city. And I don't think that just because a powerful person pays a powerful lawyer a lot of money that they should get a special meeting and that it should be rushed through, and that attorneys who recently represented the same firm should be representing the board. I don't think, when I questioned Mr. Ithel about it, I thought for sure he was going to say this was some matter from 10 years ago, some conflict that he doesn't believe exists anymore. Just a year to 2 years ago, that is really cutting it close. I would say that was inappropriate for him to represent this board. We need attorneys that are going to represent the interests of the public first and foremost. And whether that's Mr. Kelser or Mr. Ithel, I can still, I can still respect them and be nice to them. But at the end of the day, right is right and wrong is wrong. We got to put the public first. We need attorneys that are going to do the work of the citizens of New Brunswick and the residents of New Brunswick, and not the private developers who pay them a lot of money or have paid them a lot of money in the recent past. So that's all I have for tonight. I hope I didn't go on too long, but I thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak, and I hope you got something out of what I had to say. I certainly do this because I do care about the city, and I hope you understand that. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. At this time, I'll just ask, again, if there's anyone else from the public who we didn't call or put their name on the list, please come forward. Second time, anyone else from the public that'd like to speak on any issue? Third and final call, anyone else? Seeing none, everything is closed. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
This is John Zimmerman. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Commissioner Simano, I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you all.